Guys, so what I want to do with my SMART goals is I want to try to connect them with a social studies skill builder, and a lot like what Brian did with his 25-word summaries. I wanted to use summaries as my kind of my baseline and my midpoint and my finish. The reason to be is I was teaching a World History 1 class, and you guys know World History 1, it covers a pretty hefty span of time. It's like the dawn of time, man's walking, and then suddenly there's aqueducts, okay, within 3 weeks. And there's a lot going on right there, right? I mean, my gosh, you have the Roman Empire. I mean, I'm teaching them the Roman Republic, and they think it was 2 days long, and it was 500 years. So there's a lot to cover. And I think it's important, for social studies students to be able to have the skill where they can take a lot of information and they can condense it down and make some meaning out of it and kind of have a core message out of it. A lot like our digital humanities, one thing, as much as I hated 25-word summaries, the one thing I did take from 25-word summaries was that there's a message to big topics, and I think that's what I tried to focus everything on. Okay, so I'm going to show you the prompts. My first prompt I used here, what were the Punic Wars and why were they so significant leading to Rome? With the golden age of Rome, the Pax Romana. Okay, so this was my first one, and it didn't go so well because I just didn't structure it very well. I was panicking. I was like, I got to get this thing in, and I rolled in there and I tried to give my 50-word summary after a lecture and activity on the Punic Wars. I was like, guys, why is our VASOL structured so much around the Punic Wars here? Why is it so important? And it took a little time. We made a small outline, and then I let them go. I let them roll for about 30 minutes, and then I just wanted to see how they wrote. And after getting them back, not so hot. They didn't do such a good job with them. Okay, so the next one I do something a little different. I actually had them do a reading on Christianity. Okay, the spread of Christianity after the death of Christ, and basically, why do people take to Christianity is what I'm looking for. Why is it so popular, and why does it catch on so quickly throughout the Western Roman Empire? Well, I gave them a reading, and this time we did something completely different. We broke things down a little more. I actually gave them an outline activity. I'll show you the outline image I used. I actually got it offline, and it worked really well. So we designed an outline, and we did a trial and error basis. So what I would do is I'll get up on the whiteboard, and I'll put something, I'll say, okay, guys, what should be our first sentence? I'll put our first sentence up. Okay, not so hot. Okay, so we end up writing an entire 50-word summary on the grease board, and then we'd come back and we'd say, okay, well, what can we take out of this? And we spent about 45 minutes doing this, and it ended up being pretty cool because the kids got into it. They were kind of like, well, I think I can take this. Well, we can remove that. We can add this. I don't think we need that word, Coach. So it ended up being pretty interesting with this one. And then finally, I had them do, because what I did was I focused all my summaries on whatever unit we were on. And you guys know the Rome unit, even in a block style class, a 90-minute class, you're talking about at least 2.5 weeks, depending on what pacing guide you're looking at. So eventually, we start with the Punic Wars, and we get into Christianity, turning into the first century, and then we roll on into the Byzantine Empire, and we got the Justinian, and there's a lot of Byzantine emperors, but we don't talk a lot about the other ones. There's Theodosius and the Theodosian walls and things like that, but we don't ever really focus on it. We focus on Justinian and Theodora. And why do we do that? What is the meaning behind Justinian? Why is he such an important character? And what I'm looking for in my students is to say, oh, well, hey, Coach, this is Eastern culture. He develops Eastern culture. The culture that we know today, the Onion Domes, the Greek Orthodox religion, and the whole Eastern Empire, which eventually, turns into a Slavic style, a Slavic lifestyle later on. We see it here, and that's kind of what I'm looking for out of them. Okay. So my SMART goal, was for the student growth, 100% of participating students will either hold steady or increase their grades by 3 points on their 50-word summaries. Nothing too daunting, but it's pretty achievable. Okay, so my expectations, I think I've already discussed this. I'm not going to sit here and go over it. Structure and grammar are important to me, but I think core message was more important to me. It is an English class. I want them to write well, but when I'm looking at it, I want them to say, hey, daggone, hey, Coach, I know what you're saying. I know what's important here. Okay, so that's what I'm getting at. Core message is very important for the summaries, okay? All right, so my class, I did this with my first and second block class, the 9th grade world history students. Most of them are rural kids. They're about average students. Probably about 3 kids in each class that could probably go on to an honors level course, but they're in that one class. They're average students for the most part. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, as you know. I had a blind girl in one class. I did have a aide with her, so that was challenging at times. Everything had to be brailled. I had to get things to her beforehand. But she was a very smart young lady. She did a nice job. The class is pretty average. Pretty lazy group. I have them early in the morning. We start class at 7:50. They're falling asleep on me. Half of them hate me. Some of them like me. It just depends on who you are. Okay? The second period class was typically better. They had PE first. They come in. They're a little more awake. Some of them were sweaty. So, it just depends on the smell of that day. Here's my first baseline, okay, and I highlighted and read the things I'm looking for. I based it on I forgot to put my rubric in here. It's a 25-point rubric. Student 1, Student 2, Student 3. All of these students are basically on the same level. I picked these students out. There's a girl and there's 2 boys, and they'd all run track, and I'd been around them, and I just kind of wanted to see how they did with it. So the first student is 18 out of 25. Be as specific as possible. I say things like, where is Carthage, where is Rome? Okay, so they would throw out terms, but there was no idea where those places were. As the reader, I kind of wanted to say, hey, you're telling me something, but I don't know. I always used to say, okay, well, what about if there's a Wikipedia entry? It has to be, the very first paragraph of Wikipedia entry kind of tells you everything you need to know. Okay? Avoid unimportant details. Why are they fighting? Who are the major players? These are some things that I'm looking for within the summary. Okay? And student 3 doesn't even mention who's fighting. Okay? They mention the Punic Wars. Okay? These wars happen. They go on about Hannicar Barco. They never mention Hannibal. They mention his father, and I think they even mentioned that Barcelona is named after him. So that was something fun we talked about in lecture, but it didn't pertain to what I was looking for the big picture. But again, this baseline wasn't very structured very well. I didn't do a very good job with it. This is the summary chart I used. I found it online. I was like, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a little elementary. But I was like, it'll be cool that they'll have something to look at and something to be able to break down the reading or whatever I had them doing that day. Okay, so we did this with the second reading. Okay, and then we got up on the board and we wrote the assignments together, and we enjoyed that. We took a 50-word summary, we cut it all the way down to a 42-word summary. We went from 42 to 38. We ended up making a 28-word summary, and it was really tightly compacted, and I think it was nice, meaningful. I think they started picking up on the idea of it. So the last one, I kind of turned them loose. I did have them turn in a rough draft of an outline before they wrote their last one on the Justinian reading. And then, it was nice improvement over the course of time. We have a 4-point improvement here, really, and a 3-point here, not counting the improvement from the midsection. Now, I do have that in my work in the folder, but I didn't put it up here. Okay, so just wasting some words. Continue to work towards your big picture. Student 3 ended up increasing by 4 points, so that was nice. So I had an average of a 3.3. Improvement, 9.3 on our overall grades. So it ended up doing pretty well. They did show improvement. It wasn't drastic by any means. Some of them, it's hard to tell whether they're improved at, but I think the structure of their summaries was better than the first one. And I think the outline helped. I think, them kind of writing it, then redoing it also helped. Okay? All right, so it did meet the SMART goal because I had a 3.3 point improvement, so that it met it. If I could do things differently, I'd probably give them a little bit more time in class to work on it, because it's a 90-minute block class, and they're 9th graders. Some of them are not just very disinterested anyway, so I didn't want to send them out of class and have them have to do this work. So I think it pertained to the unit. I think I should have made more time for it in class, especially more time for them to write rough drafts, correct it, minimize it, just like we did on the board that day. I think I could have done a better job with that. But overall, the student growth, I think they did a better job with. I think they gained some concepts of writing summaries, and I think that does carry over to some other content areas that they're going to encounter through their secondary education. That's all I got for you guys.